U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be visiting Kenya, Nigeria and Senegal from Monday next week in a bid to resolve a number of crises on the continent. In his first visit to the continent as a diplomat, Blinken will seek solutions to the conflicts in Sudan, Ethiopia, as well as the West Africa region. Blinken will meet first with Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta in Nairobi to discuss topics including cooperation on ending the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as regional security issues such as Ethiopia, Somalia and Sudan. He then travels to Abuja in Nigeria to meet with Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari to discuss cooperation on global health, security, expanding energy access and revitalizing democracy. Meanwhile, in Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta has ordered security officials to increase vigilance on the East African country's borders following heightened tensions in neighboring countries. Earlier, we spoke to SABC correspondent Sarah Kimani.
In Kenya, he seems to be welcome because Kenya today just issued a travel advisory indicating that it has heightened security along its borders, especially because of what is happening in Sudan, but also what is happening in Ethiopia, and most recently conflict that has erupted in parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. So his arrival in Kenya is seen as likely to increase diplomatic efforts to see a return to normalcy in Sudan and also in Ethiopia, and maybe to kickstart talks in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where conflict has started in the east.
President Kenyatta, as you pointed out, has indeed ordered security officials to increase vigilance on East African countries' borders following these heightened tensions. Is this common for the president to issue such directives?
No, not common. Usually such directives will come from the police or the Minister for Internal Security. But apart from him, this afternoon we've also seen Britain in its normal travel advisories issuing a travel advisory saying that citizens of Britain who are in Kenya should avoid going to the coast of Kenya in areas near the border with Somalia, that is the island of Lamu, but also on the border between Kenya and Somalia in the towns of Mandera, Garissa, and Wajir, where mostly there would be likely attacks from the Al-Shabaab militant group. Of course, they did not mention anything to do with Ethiopia, but last week the Kenya police issued a statement saying that it was watching the borders also because there is likely to be an influx of refugees entering the country from the borders of Ethiopia and Kenya.
Well, some analysis now. We're joined by Dr. Margaret Monyani, who's a lecturer of international relations at Wits University here in Johannesburg. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you for having me, and good evening.
All right, Antony Blinken, why is he going to Kenya? It looks as if this relationship between America and Kenya is almost a given that if a diplomat comes from there, must start in Nairobi, even if the issues are in the DRC, Sudan and Somalia.
Okay, yeah. So what we need to know that Kenya has been a key partner to the U.S., especially in the fight against terrorism. So, not just that, but in the last 10 years, Kenya has been a very key partner in fighting terrorism because of the Al-Shabaab in Somalia. So it is understandable that the Secretary of State would go to Kenya first. But that is not the only reason. I would say this is Biden-Harris administration trying to take shape. Because remember, if you looked historically at Trump's era, he was more aloof on African issues. It's just until 2018 when he came up with the African strategy, but he was aloof all along. So, and that had a consequence in the sense that now China became entrenched on the continent. It, of course, spread its wings its power on the continent, and that doesn't go well with a superpower like the US. So I think they're trying to get back into the picture, because at the end of the day, we are living in a multipolar world. It's not just China. We have these emerging powers like Brazil, Russia, who also have interests on the continent. So I see where they're coming up from, because this is not even the first virtual visit that the Secretary of State is going to have. So Kenya is very strategically placed economically. Even if you check the major, Kenya has the UN headquarters in Africa, and other major institutions have headquarters in Kenya. So, and I think mostly is because of the issue of security. Kenya holds the key to that security in the Horn of Africa. If you look at Ethiopia, which was one of the main partners, now it's going down the drain, and that will not work against the US, because Al-Shabaab attacks Kenya because of its relationship with the US. And we look at statistically that Kenya experienced, like between 2010 to 2015, Kenya experienced around over 100 terror attacks, so it's not a small matter. So that's, I want to believe security is the main issue that puts Kenya a key partner to the US.
And talking about security, let's talk about some of the concerns that President Kenyatta has in raising this alert level on the borders. If you could just talk to us about how what's happening in neighboring countries can impact, and perhaps is already impacting, Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya is Kenya's neighbors. They are having civil strife, internal civil strife. From Sudan, Ethiopia has been in the news, and we've seen what is happening there. And now Somalia, a failed state. That is just a failed state, and it's chaotic. They don't have a well-functioning government. So when you have this kind of neighbors, you have to be on alert, because there is the spillover effects, and that has already been seen historically. Kenya has had to host refugees coming from these countries, and when people cross borders and come into your country, while they're seeking refugees, the migrants come with the good and the bad. You can't tell who was actually even fighting those countries, who was the terrorist, who was the perpetrator. You can't tell. So I understand where the fears are coming from. And as I mentioned earlier, between 2010 and 2015, experiencing over 100 terror attacks, that's not a small matter. And just not the terror attacks. The northern part of Kenya, and of course now the tribes living closer to these states, let's say Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, are people who are now been exposed to small guns and light weapons that are getting way into the country. So the government has to be on the alert. It is about the security of the state. It's about the security of Kenyans. So that is all about, and the porous nature of the borders in the Horn of Africa. So yeah, security ties to development. There's nothing you will be able to do. You can't trade, you can't travel when your neighbors are in turmoil. So that should be the concern of the government.
How are relations between Somalia and Kenya at this time? I know that this maritime border between the two has been a thorny issue, and we've even seen them expel each other's diplomats several times.
Yes. In the last 2 years or so, 3 years, in the few months coming up to last month or the other month, until that verdict was given, of course, these two countries were on each other's necks, and Somalia was accusing Kenya of interfering in its internal matters because of supporting the peaceful Somaliland, and they were not happy about it because they wanted the Kenyan government to support the central government of Somalia, and so that support wasn't coming in. But there is the reason why Kenya was supporting the peaceful Somaliland is because they were using them as a partner to fight Al-Shabaab. So the relationships are not too bad. I mean, I wouldn't say they're now sworn enemies. It's just part of politics where you don't have permanent enemies or permanent friends. Kenya needs Somalia, that's for a fact, needs especially the Somalian government in its fight for Al-Shabaab. So they have to find a way. I think at the point, quiet diplomacy could be at play because we haven't heard of any other hiccups or someone calling out the other. So I want to believe there is some quiet diplomacy that is going on to resolve the issues.
Some might say, how dare America comes to Africa to help sort out regional issues in Africa? Who is America to do this?
America is a superpower. So let's look at it from that angle. The fact that they are a superpower, so they have this moral, quote unquote, right to, of course, to interfere in other people's issues, which is not the right thing to do. I know Africans are becoming conscious, you know, and I'm glad you raised that point, that Africans are being conscious. They realize that even when aid comes from the West, it comes with strings attached. And I think that's where you will see people saying now, okay, they bring aid, but then there's these strings attached. That is not the case with China. You know, China is a silent partner. They actually practice what is called non-political interference. Among the agenda you read, you heard that when the Secretary of State will come in, they will discuss 2022 elections in Kenya. China doesn't engage in internal issues, political issues, who should be the leader. They don't. They just engage on infrastructural development. That is why they have been able to infiltrate the continent silently. And it's just now people are waking up to Chinese merchandise, Chinese projects all over the place. So yes, why should the US, it has a moral right, it has the economic might, it has the military might, and it has interests, strategic, political, economic interests. So it's just part of the game that they have to be on the table. Like I said, if you look at Trump, who was a little laid back, and because of that, other actors came on board. Other developing countries, emerging powers came on board and grabbed the chance. So I think they're trying to reassert or reposition themselves on the continent.
There was a time for sure there was a direct link between the United States and Kenya in terms of security. And we saw, sadly, these bombings that took place, and Kenya pay a heavy price in backing the US's efforts on the continent. 2021, is that still the case? Is there still a security issue in Africa that is directly connected to the United States? I mean, they've pulled out of the Middle East, Afghanistan recently, for goodness sake.
Yeah, when it comes to security, security is very dynamic. They might have pulled out physically, but the engagements are still ongoing. You know, in fact, the very reason, if you go into history, the very reason why the US started being attacked, like in 1998, Kenya got bombed by the Al-Qaeda group. They had actually downplayed the Al-Qaeda group. They had the intelligence information, but they were just like, no, even the leader of Al-Qaeda group, Osama bin Laden, we know this guy, he's in business, he doesn't have anything. And all along, the Al-Qaeda group was strategizing. And since then, 1998 bomb blast, in fact, twin bomb blast in Kenya and Tanzania on the US embassies. And then 2 years later, the 2001, the 9/11. Since then, they have been very much on alert. They don't want to leave any stone unturned. So I know, like in the last 2 or 3 years, nothing serious has happened in Kenya. There are a few bombings here and there, losing a life here and there, or a scare, but nothing serious. But you can never sleep when you have a terrorist next door. That is not something a state should do. So I understand they know, and no, the problem with terrorism, this is what is happening. They are now recruiting civilians, and you now see ISIS in Mozambique as we speak. They are not just even, ISIS is not just even recruiting civilians. They have the ambition to become a state. You know, when this terrorist organization starts now to challenge countries that they can even form their own states, it's not something that can be downplayed. So yes, they might not be out there in the public, but security issues, however minute they are, they cannot be downplayed, because Al-Shabaab is still has its operations ongoing in Somalia. It hasn't stopped. So until we hear that they stopped operating, maybe at that point, the US would go to sleep. But as long as they're still working, recruiting local Kenyans and taking them, it's a major thing in the country. The radicalization has gone to another level. So the young boys and girls are being recruited, taken to Somalia to be trained from Kenya, Tanzania. And you see, these are some of the concerns even the government has, and is very particular about the borders, because they are not just concerned about those people who will migrate, cross borders from these war-torn countries, but also the fact that the young people in the country are being recruited and sponsored to cross borders, to go into these territories to be radicalized.
All right, perhaps as a final question, I'm not sure if you can shed some light on this. He's going to Nigeria as well, and perhaps understandably, it's one of the superpowers on the continent. But what about Senegal? Why is he going there?
I know, that is also, I think it's a statement as well that it's not just about the big powers. You know, Kenya is an economic powerhouse of the East Africa, of course, Nigeria in West Africa. And it's just a statement to also say that they're not ruling out this, what could be considered smaller countries on the continent. They have even, they do have interest in those countries. So going to Senegal it's a statement in itself, so that it doesn't look like major powers on the continent like South Africa, Kenya, Ghana, and are monopolizing this relationship between the continent and the US.
Margaret, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much indeed. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Your insights greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.